Greetings, fellow wanderers. Tonight, we take a journey into the strange and the inexplicable stories shared by those brave enough to document moments that shattered their sense of normalcy. From the depths of digital forums, like those corners of the web where the bizarre thrives, I have unearthed tales of glitches in the Matrix. These are not just stories. They are experiences that defy logic and leave us wondering if the world around us is as stable as it seems. Tonight, I will share these accounts, tales of doppelgängers, impossible objects, and time slips, all told by those who've stumbled upon cracks in the foundation of reality. Have you ever scrolled through a forum and stumbled upon something that sent chills down your spine? Something so uncanny, it felt like it could happen to you? These are their words, unfiltered and haunting. As I read them, I ask you, have you ever experienced something similar? Do you dare step into the unknown with me? If not, you might after hearing these stories. So, wanderers, prepare yourselves. These stories will challenge everything you know about the world around you. Our first story comes from Lana, a curious soul with a fascination for abandoned places. Her love for exploring forgotten spaces led her to a discovery that would challenge everything she thought she knew about reality. What began as an innocent exploration of deserted restaurants quickly turned into an encounter with a world that seemed to shift right before her eyes. Prepare yourselves, fellow wanderers, for a tale that will leave you questioning the stability of your own surroundings. I've always been fascinated by abandoned places. There's something captivating about seeing what's left behind and how time changes things. It's even more intriguing when everything remains just as it was when the building or house was last used. Watching how nature takes over or objects decay without human interference is endlessly fascinating to me. About 3 years ago, I visited a small coastal town in Maine, known for its old fishing ports and quirky shops. While wandering near a strip of boarded-up buildings, I overheard someone mention that the restaurants further down the road had been abandoned for years. Naturally, I had to go check it out. The first place I came across was an old seafood shack right by the water. It had clearly been deserted for ages. The paint was peeling, and the weathered sign reading Captain's Catch was barely legible. There wasn't much left inside, just some broken chairs and a rusty counter. The next spot was a diner called Harbor Eats. It was like a time capsule. The tables and booze were still there, but thick layers of dust and cobwebs covered everything, and the ceiling fans drooped as if they were ready to fall. A faded sign, taped to the door, read, "Condemned." Peering through the windows, I could see plates and utensils still on the tables, as if the place had been abandoned in the middle of a busy day. Finally, I came across an old sandwich shop. This one was in the worst condition. Tables and chairs were piled into a corner, parts of the ceiling had caved in, and there was a faded "For Sale" sign stuck to the cracked glass door. The whole building looked like it could collapse at any moment. After exploring, I walked back to meet my family, who were browsing a craft market a few blocks away. About an hour later, they decided it was time to grab something to eat. I told them the restaurants down the road were abandoned, but they didn't listen. So, we walked back to the area, and to my shock, all 3 restaurants were open and bustling with activity. The seafood shack was lit up with families eating at outdoor tables. The diner was full of people enjoying meals, and the sandwich shop even had a small line of customers at the counter. We ended up eating at the sandwich shop, but I couldn't shake the eerie feeling. The next day, I went back out of curiosity, and everything was abandoned again. Cobwebs, dust, broken furniture, just as it had been the first time I saw it. I even double-checked the names of the restaurants to make sure I wasn't mistaken. It was definitely the same area. My family thought I must have got mixed up about where we were, but I know what I saw. Years later, in 2022, I visited the same town again, and those restaurants were still abandoned, looking even worse than before. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened. Lana's story reminds us that the world isn't always as fixed and unchanging as it seems. Was this a fleeting glimpse into an alternate reality, a time slip, or something even more inexplicable? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. Our perception of reality can sometimes betray us in the most fascinating and unsettling ways. If you've ever experienced something similar, perhaps you too have wandered into the cracks of the Matrix. Until next time, keep your mind open and your curiosity alive. The unknown is always closer than it appears. Our next story comes from Alex, who thought a simple trip would be like any other. But as the journey unfolded, something strange happened, an event so unexplainable that it would leave Alex questioning the very nature of reality. What happens when the ordinary takes a turn for the impossible? Let's find out. During the day, I wear prescription sunglasses, and at night, I switch to regular prescription glasses. A few months ago, my husband and I went on a trip to Europe. Before leaving the house, I was wearing my sunglasses and grabbed the case where my glasses should have been. It was just a habit to bring both pairs. However, once we arrived at our destination and I went to swap my sunglasses for my regular glasses, I realized the case was empty. It was frustrating. I ended up having to spend the entire trip without my glasses at night. Fast forward about a month, we went on another trip, this time to the East Coast. Determined not to make the same mistake, I double-checked that I had both pairs before leaving. I even commented to my husband, "At least I won't forget my glasses this time." I packed both the sunglasses and regular glasses in my carry-on backpack. On the flight, I added my scarf and sweater to the backpack for extra room and rummaged through it a couple of times to grab other items. By the time we landed and were waiting for our ride, it was nighttime, so I reached into the bag to switch to my regular glasses. That's when I realized the glasses weren't there. I tore through the backpack again, but they were nowhere to be found. My husband even emptied the entire bag on the curb to double-check, but still, nothing. Frustrated, we got to the hotel and searched again, thinking maybe we had somehow missed them during our earlier search. We emptied the bag completely, every pocket, every corner, but the glasses weren't there. At that point, I resigned myself to spending another trip without them, despite being certain I had packed them. When we returned home, I went to unpack the bag. I set it on a chair in my office and started pulling things out, still thinking about how my glasses had mysteriously disappeared. I was sorting through the contents when I noticed the case for my sunglasses. I picked it up absent-mindedly, but then, to my shock, I noticed another case right behind it, the case for my regular glasses. I froze. I opened it, and there they were, my glasses safe and sound. I stood there in complete disbelief, calling out for my husband. He came in, and when I showed him, he was just as stunned as I was. We had both scoured that bag multiple times during the trip, and they had not been there. To this day, I can't explain how they vanished and then reappeared in the same backpack. My husband joked that it was like the universe hit undo, but the experience left me feeling like reality isn't as solid as we think. It's as though we're living in some kind of simulation, and sometimes the programming just glitches. Alex's story leaves us pondering the strange and unexpected ways reality can bend. Were the glasses lost in some alternate plane, only to return as if nothing had happened? Or was this a simple case of human error disguised as something more? Sometimes, the smallest disruptions remind us that our world may not be as predictable as we think. What do you believe? Until next time, wanderers, stay curious and keep exploring the unknown. Our next tale comes from Rachel, who spent weeks recovering in a hospital after a serious illness. But amidst her routine of recovery, she found herself stepping into a part of the hospital that wasn't supposed to exist. What she encountered defies explanation and left her questioning not only her senses, but the very fabric of time. Brace yourself, wanderers. This is a story of eerie corridors, forgotten places, and an unshakable sense of being watched. Back in 2021, when I was 41 years old, I was admitted to Clearwater Regional Hospital in the Midwest for sepsis. It turned out I had a blood infection and a heart condition called endocarditis. I stayed in the hospital for 6 weeks while antibiotics worked their magic, and thankfully I recovered. But during that time, something happened that I still can't explain. Clearwater Regional has been around for decades. Its old building, demolished in 2012, had a distinctive early 20th century charm with its tall windows and creaky wooden floors. The new building, constructed on the same site, was sleek and modern, everything you'd expect from a state-of-the-art hospital. To clarify, the old building was completely torn down, replaced by this new clinical space. While I was there, I developed a bit of a routine. I'd leave my ward, take the elevator down to the ground floor, go outside for a cigarette, and then return the same way. The hospital was quiet at night, and I didn't think much of my surroundings until one night when everything changed. After my usual cigarette break, I got into the elevator and pressed the button for my floor. Instead of going up, the elevator began to descend. I figured it was just a glitch and planned to press the button again once it stopped. But when the doors opened, I immediately felt that something was off. The hallway didn't look like the hospital I was familiar with. It was darker, emptier, and felt wrong. The walls were aged, painted in a muted green color that screamed decades old, and the air carried a musty, stale scent. There wasn't a single person in sight. Against my better judgment, I stepped out to look around, though every instinct told me I shouldn't. To my left was a doorway with a sign above it that read Emergency Ward. That made no sense. Emergency was supposed to be above me, not below. I kept walking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but the further I went, the stranger it got. The air felt heavy, like I was wading through something invisible, and an eerie silence enveloped everything. Then I saw the beds. They had old metal frames with thin blue mattresses, the kind you'd expect in a hospital from the 1950s, not a modern one. The deeper I ventured, the darker it became, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched crept over me. My heart raced, and I suddenly panicked. I turned around and ran back to the elevator, slamming the button for my floor. Thankfully, the elevator brought me back up to familiar territory. I hurried to my room, my mind racing to make sense of what I'd just seen. After that, I avoided using that elevator whenever I could. I tried convincing myself it was exhaustion or a part of the hospital I didn't know about, but the memory of those old, forgotten corridors stuck with me. About a week later, I had no choice but to use the elevator late at night. My stomach turned as I pressed the button. When the elevator arrived, I froze in place. Instead of displaying a floor number, the screen above the doors showed a single letter, X. That was all I needed to see. I stepped away and decided I'd rather take the stairs, no matter how long it took. I still don't know what to make of the experience. People talk about time slips and residual energy from the past, but I don't know if that's what I encountered. All I know is that it felt deeply wrong, and it's something I'll never forget. What do you think Rachel stumbled into that night? Was it a glimpse of the hospital's past, imprinted on the present? A malfunction in time? Or something else entirely? Stories like these remind us that there are places where the boundaries of reality seem to waver. Until next time, wanderers keep exploring and questioning. The truth is often stranger than fiction.